Hello, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to Molten Music Technology. Today, I'm going to show you how to make the RD-8 trigger the MS-101. Oh yes, now I know that sounds easy, but it's not, because it doesn't work. But it does, as in I can show you how to get it to work, but it doesn't seem to work out of the box, which is a bit of a head scratcher. It's the RD-8 from Behringer, it's the MS-101 from Behringer. And sync works fine. You can sync the two together. I did a video all about that. But using the trigger outputs on the back to create an interesting rhythm on the MS-101 sequencer cannot be done until I show you how. Why would I want to do this? Well, because it's awesome. Do you capture a little bit of this? Because what happened, right? I was inspired by a guy called Gerald. I was literally on stage with a guy called Gerald on Saturday night at Synthfest, and amongst all the stuff that he did, he took a trigger out of his TR-08 that he uses, plugged it into the SH-01A that he uses, and created this rhythm. Just put together a couple of notes. He wasn't doing a sequence of note, hold, rest, note, tie, rest stuff. He just put in 8 notes and patterned it up on his TR-08, and off it went like that. This great rhythmic melody that's moving the sequencer along with every time you put something into the pattern here. And I stood there going, well, that's awesome. I should do that. That's amazing. So I got straight home. Well, when I got straight home, I plugged the RD-8 into here and went, oh, it doesn't work. Oh, and I've spent the last number of hours trying to work out exactly why it doesn't work and how to resolve it. And I believe I have. So that's what I'm going to share with you in this quick video. I hope, quick video. The first thing to say, though, is about the trigger outputs on the RD-8. Now, these trigger outputs on the back here, 1, 2, 3 on 1/4-inch jacks, these are designed really, truly for running other drum modules. You know, drum modules are the sort of thing you plug electronic pads into, that kind of thing. So they're on 1/4-inch jacks, they go into the trigger inputs and other things and they trigger those. That's what they're for. So plugging it into the MS-101 is not necessarily what it's designed to do. However, the fact that it works with the 808 and the 101, the Roland ones, and it's such a fantastic and groovy thing, then you'd expect it to work with the clones of those devices. Would you not? Anyway, the first thing to say though is that I could not find in any of the documentation, in any of the videos that Behringer have done on the RD-8, what the trigger outputs actually respond to. Because the idea is that you create a pattern here and it goes out of the trigger outputs. But on what channel do you create those patterns? It does not say. It's been driving me nuts. However, digging around into the SH-101 manual and hearing other people talk about that, and in fact, Gerald mentioned it on Saturday night, is that it's the accent channel, the hand clap channel, and the cowbell channel. Those are the ones. So those 3 channels correspond to trigger out 1, 2, and 3 on the back. And the idea is you pick hand clap, you write in your pattern, you turn down the clap, and you're now triggering something else. But I thought that was a useful piece of information just to give you to start with, because it took me ages to find that out, and it seems like an obvious thing, a line you could have put in the manual that just says the trigger outputs correspond to accent, hand clap and cowbell, and you're done and you're off. You don't have to worry about it, but you know. So what I'm going to do, I mean, I could give you the easy answer. The easy answer is to do with envelopes, right? But we'll get to that in a minute. I'll just show you what's happening and how you resolve it. All right? So step 1, we'll take trigger output 1. That's the only one we're going to worry about, trigger output 1, because the rest are the same, and that is run on the accent channel. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to plug it into a drum module to show you it triggering stuff. Now, if I turn down the volume on the RD-8, so that's not doing anything, I'm just going to have accent going to the drum trigger. It's that simple. It's not this. That's that. That's the TR8. See, that's the RD-8. This is my drum module over here. So the triggering totally works. It absolutely and totally works. However, when I take that trigger and I plug it into the external clock in on my MS-101 and hit play, it does nothing. It does nothing. Now, if I take my trigger output that I've got in the back here and plug it into the external sync out on the back, that one there, the clock out, that does work. It clocks the MS-101, no problem. I've got another video on that. But if it's coming out of the trigger output, you get nothing. Nothing at all. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. So what I did next was wondering, how can I trigger the MS-101 through something else? I mean, I can use a clock out from another device. I can use it from the RD-8. I can take a clock from, say, something like the Behringer over here. Clock out. There you go. That's going along. So we know that it works, but it's just not being moved along by the trigger from the RD-8. So let's try something else. So I'll take it out of one of the gate outputs, for instance. That works. So a gate output, and I can change those to give that a little bit of rhythm too. So all I'm trying to prove here is that the MS-101 does absolutely and totally respond to triggers or gates or something coming into its external clock input, and it advances the sequencer step by step. Rather than just clocking round, it's going one step, then another step, then another step, depending on the trigger. So why isn't that doing it? Why isn't that? Well, to solve that problem, you need to look at it on a bit of a scope. So I'm going to bring you in and we're going to do that. Here's my scope, this fella here. So let me take the output of the RD-8 and I'm going to plug that into the top part of the scope. See, that's still plugged into our drums, and you can see the triggers, yeah? You can see those triggers. Now if I take this output from here that was just triggering that drum, I'm going to plug it into the MS-101 and we get nothing. So it's plugged in over here to the MS-101, nothing at all. Right. Now, something that was working was like the gate out from here, or the clock out from here. So let's have a look to see what that looks like on the second scope. So let's take the clock out. See, this is the clock out signal. This is the trigger. So the clock out is a much wider signal, which has given us a clue as to why this is not working. If I use the gate out on the number 2, that's similar, but I actually have control over the pulse width of that. And I wonder if that will make a difference. So that's coming into number 2. I'm going to take this end, plug it back into the MS-101. So that is working with this. Now, if I can remember how I do this, I can change that pulse width to bring it down to be more like a trigger. I mean, as you can see, this trigger, even at its smallest pulse, is a lot wider than the trigger that's coming from the RD-8. And that's still working, but this isn't. Let's just have a look at some other triggers in my system. So for instance, get a trigger out from my random rhythm. And as you can see, it's also wider than the trigger, and it's working. So it occurred to me, essentially, that this trigger it's just too sharp. It's not giving the MS-101 enough voltage for it to decide that it's something it needs to react to. So how can we improve upon that? Well, the answer has to be an envelope or something of that nature. We need to increase the width of this pulse. That's what we need to do. So if we take that output, plug it into, say, an envelope. I've got an envelope up here. Then take the output of that envelope, back to our scope. You can see that this envelope has been triggered by the RD-8. I can press stop and it stops, play and it goes again. But it's now controlling the MS-101 because I've applied a little bit of envelope to it. Now I can shorten the envelope a bit until it stops working. See? The envelope is now too narrow and the MS-101 is no longer picking it up. But as I increase the decay, it starts to pick it up. And there you are, we're back in happy days again. And there you go, there's a long and complicated way in order to do it. So just to summarize, to get some kind of handle on what this is all about. The RD-8's trigger output is too sharp to trigger the MS-101. So instead, if we trigger an envelope, the size of that envelope can trigger the MS-101 instead. It's ridiculous and a bit stupid that these two cannot communicate with each other just normally off the shelf, out of the box with a single cable, you know, and of course they can if you're just syncing. If you're just syncing, that's fine, just use the sync out, the clock out, and the clock in. But if you want to do the clever, a guy called Gerald stuff, which is awesome, by using the pattern on here to control the pattern of the sequencer, then you're going to have to do it via an envelope or some other form. You can also, as I say, use the hand clap or the cowbell for trigger outputs 2 and trigger outputs 3. But otherwise, there you go. And yes, I have updated the firmware on the RD-8, and it is a pain in the arse if you're on Windows. You have to do some strange hack where you update some USB driver using some strange application from nowhere, and then you've got to hold something in the back while you turn it on. And you're not, yeah, anyway, I have done all that. I don't know how Behringer can fix it other than making the trigger pulse longer. I mean, it says in the manual the trigger pulse is set to 1 millisecond, so presumably that's just too small, or the MS-101 is too sensitive or not sensitive enough. However, I can trigger it with anything else. Anything else I've got that sends out a trigger is working. So why that doesn't, I don't know. But there you go. That's my workaround. I hope that was helpful. I hope that information overload of stuff is helpful. And now we can just move on with our acid rave dance party. And of course you can still use the other trigger outs for triggering other things. There you go, I hope that was helpful.